O Yahweh, open up you my lips, and let my mouth show forth your praise. Kuma, Yahweh, Wayaputsu o Yaveka, Wayanusa misanecha mikaniacha. Kuma, Yahweh, Wayaputsu o Yaveka, Wayanusa misanecha mikaniacha. Arise of you, O Yahweh. Let your enemies be scattered, and let those that hate thee flee from before thee. Let all of Yasharah, Yisrael, who love, worship, and praise Yahweh, give him thanks by saying Hallelujah.
So family, get ready to pause to read through all of this.
When we consider the vision of the temple as conveyed by the prophets, there's much more going on in that we need to understand. And we also have to become seers in order to understand the prophecies of this time. According to Joel 2:28 and Acts 2:17, at this time your young man shall dream dreams, and your old man shall see visions. That doesn't just mean men, it means women too. And so in Matthew 13, the scripture makes it very clear that it is given unto only certain people to understand the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, but to others it is not given. To others parables are given. And it says, for whoever has, to him it shall be given, and he shall have more abundance, but whosoever hath not, from him shall be taken away even that which he has. And so this is why it is important for us to understand prophecies and revelation. So let's take a look at the vision of Yahusha according to the witnesses and prophets. It's kind of like time travel through scripture. If you can observe it and understand it in a sci-fi, you can understand that everything the enemy does is a copy of what Yah is actually doing in heaven and in the earth. Only his version is better.
When we look at this golden ratio formula, we see that there are 3 of these curves which seem to have the appearance of a 6. And we see 6 prophets as well. And so that is 4 layers of 6, like the 4 and 20 elders who are in the upper heavens even during the 1,000-year reign. So the 1,000-year reign will be both in heaven and on earth.
It is the prophets who warn and blow the trumpet so that we can understand the times that we are in. And as a kingdom of priests, it is essential to understand how to see. What do you see? This is the question that is always asked of the prophets before Yah gives them a vision. But there are many witnesses in scripture. There are Malachim and Israel seem to be the sole witnesses throughout all of scripture. In Genesis, Yahuwah had to destroy all of the fallen seed via a flood, creating a salty ocean, just like after he destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, creating the salt sea. And this is why when Israel crossed out of the land of sin, out of Egypt, the salt sea ocean was parted so that dry land was revealed. The natural order of things is that water is fresh, and this is why when Israel went into the promised land, they crossed over fresh water into the promised land. And so ultimately, in the end of time and the coming of the great 1,000-year reign kingdom, there will be fresh and living waters flowing in all directions out of that kingdom to seal the promise of living water that will bring eternal life. We're going to go quickly through the series of 2 witnesses throughout the temple and all time, those who witnessed to Yahuwah and Yahusha, to the birth of the offspring of Abraham, the 12 tribes, so that we can understand this pattern of life and creation is even in the temple in Israel, and the two who witness to the one over and over again through time.
The first two witnesses that we have to witnessing Yahusha as he walked in the cool of the day, who is Yahuwah, the presence of Yahusha HaMashiach, were Adam and Eve. These are the first two prophets and witnesses to Yahuwah himself. And they dwelt in the Garden of Eden. And we know that Israel are trees. And this is why when Yahusha gives sight to the blind man says, I see men walking about as trees.
And so we know, of course, that when Adam and Eve were driven out of the garden, Yahuwah placed two cherubims east of the Garden of Eden and a flaming sword which turned every way to keep the way of the tree of life. When the angel of Yahuwah appears on the plain of Mamre to announce to Abraham that Sarah will give birth to his seed, Isaac, he has two men standing by him and flanking on either side as a witness when Abraham sees them, and they become men after first coming as angels. And after that, Yahuwah goes on his way, and he leaves the two witnesses behind to go to Sodom and Gomorrah, while Yahuwah, the angel of Yahuwah, who is Yahusha himself, destroys Sodom and Gomorrah. But here are the two witnesses.
And Yahuwah sets up the tabernacle in the wilderness. He says in Exodus 25 and 22, There I will meet with thee, and I will commune with thee from above the mercy seat, and from between the two cherubims which are on the ark of the testimony, of all things which I will give thee in commandment unto the children of Israel. So even the two testaments within the ark are also two witnesses to his spirit and his word. Yahuwah instructs Israel to build the menorah, the lampstand that is before the Ark of the Covenant, in the room before the Ark of the Covenant. There are 7 candlesticks on this menorah that is made like the arms of an almond tree. And so there are 3 on one side of the menorah and 3 on the other side of the menorah, and the central candlestick actually has one more bowl than all the rest. So the 3 candlesticks on either side witness to the central candlestick that is higher than the rest. In addition, every single candlestick has an almond bowl, an almond flour, and an almond bud on it, all totaling 66. 6 plus 6 is 12, and so those are the 12 tribes of Israel, witnessing to and providing oil for the 7 lampstands, which are the 7 churches, because the oil and fatness comes from the tree, and the tree is Israel, the root is Yahusha. And this is why the scripture says, For if you were cut from what is by nature a wild olive tree to the Gentiles, and grafted contrary to the nature into a cultivated olive tree, how much more will these, the natural branches, be grafted back into their own olive tree? So you see, the tree itself belongs to Israel, whereas the root belongs to Yahusha HaMashiach. And so that is why it says, And if some of the branches be broken off, and thou being a wild olive tree be grafted in among them, and with them partakest of the root and fatness of the olive tree. And they are grafted into the almond tree that is Israel, whose root is supported by Yahusha. They are grafted into the branch, and then the oil of the true olive trees, Israel, the 2 witnesses, is what the fat that the 7 churches feed on to light their lamp, and the oil belongs to Israel. And so when we consider the outer room of the tabernacle and the inner room of the tabernacle, we see 7 lampstands in the menorah witnessing to the 2 cherubim and the 2 testaments or tablets that are witnessing to Yahuwah, who is the Spirit at the center of the ark. And 6 and 6 equals the 12 tribes. And so the 12 tribes witness to the great light that is Yahusha HaMashiach. Before we enter into the tabernacle to see the lamp that is before the room in which the Holy of Holies is, we have a door that is made out of 2 olive trees, and on each door panel is a cherubim. And so once again we have the 2 olive trees and the 2 cherubim witnessing to what is inside the temple, the Spirit inside the temple when we enter in. And before we actually enter into the temple, we have 2 pillars, the pillar of Boaz on the right and Jason on the left. Boaz is from Judah and Jason is from Simeon. And so Jason and Boaz, or Simeon and Yehuda, are 2 witnesses that also hold up and stand before the Spirit of the living Yahuwah on the earth. In the book of Zechariah, chapter 4, an angel comes and reveals 2 witnesses in the form of 2 olive trees. And the angel says to him, "What seest thou?" And Zechariah says, "I have looked, and behold, a candlestick of all of gold with a bowl upon the top of it, and his 7 lamps thereon, and 7 pipes to the 7 lamps which were upon the top thereof, and 2 olive trees by it, one upon the right side of the bowl, and the other upon the left side thereof." And so Yahuwah prophesies through Zechariah at this point, saying, skipping down, "Unto Zerubbabel, not by might nor by power, but by my Spirit, saith Yahuwah of hosts. Who art thou, O great mountain? The hands of Zerubbabel have laid the foundation of this house. His hands also shall finish it. And thou shalt know that Yahuwah of hosts has sent me unto you." And so we know that Zerubbabel is of Israel, and that he built the second temple by his hands, but the hands of Yahuwah will finish it by his Spirit and by his power. And so this is the great mountain. So who has despised the day of small things? For they shall rejoice and shall see the plummet in the hand of Zerubbabel with those 7. They are the eyes of Yahuwah, which run to and fro through the earth. And then answered I and said to him, "Who are these 2 olive trees upon the right side of the candlestick, and upon the left side thereof?" And I answered again and said unto him, "What be these 2 olive branches, which through the 2 golden pipes empty the golden oil out of themselves?" And he answered and said, "Knowest thou not what these be?" And I said, "No, my Elohim." And then said he, "These are the 2 anointed ones that stand by Yahuwah of the whole earth." And so here again is a prophetic picture of the future prophecy of the building of the temple that will be established by the hands of Yahusha, but is built upon the foundation of Israel. We find again in Revelation that there is another picture of the menorah in the form of the 7 churches that have the 7 spirits that are before the throne of Yahuwah. And in the midst of these 7 churches or golden candlesticks is one like the Son of Man, clothed with a garment down to the feet and girded about the paps with a golden girdle. And his head and hairs are as white as wool and as snow, and his eyes are like a flame of fire. So once again, we have 7 candlesticks now that witness to the one. Now the central candlestick, again, like I said in the menorah, is actually, we're going to see, the Church of Philadelphia. And the other 7 churches are on either side. So the Church of Philadelphia witnesses to and worships Yahusha HaMashiach, his brother. Okay, so Israel's brother, genetic brother, is Yahusha HaMashiach, Yahuwah. And the 6 churches, the 3 on either side, also witness to the presence of Yahusha HaMashiach, who is the 8th candlestick. And so when we see that picture, there is actually 8 candlesticks, including Yahusha HaMashiach. And when you divide 8 by 2, you get 4 candlesticks, and they all worship to Yahuwah. And so those 8 candlesticks are like 2 sets of candlesticks or witnesses to Yahuwah, the Creator himself. So as I said, the Church of Philadelphia is the only church that won't go through the Great Tribulation. And that is because, as we see here, they are the second from the last candlestick, actually on the far left. And they have atoned, that is Israel, the Church of Brotherly Love, the Northern and Southern Kingdom, and they have atoned. They've made atonement for their sin. They have completed the promise of Daniel. They have sealed up the vision and made an end of sin. And so they're the only church that is excluded from the Great Tribulation. And just like Jeremiah says in Jeremiah 1, Yahuwah says that to him, "What do you see, Jeremiah?" And Jeremiah replies, "I see the branch of an almond tree." And Yahuwah says, "Yes, they will attack you, but they will not win against you, for I will be with you and keep you safe." And so this applies to the Church of Philadelphia, but also all the other churches. Though they may lose their lives, they will not lose their souls. And part of this is Revelations 11:4, where it says there are 2 olive trees and 2 candlesticks. And so as we look at the Church of Philadelphia, we're going to find out who those 2 candlesticks are. So I've already said in my other videos that the Church of Philadelphia has the keys to the kingdom of David, and that is basically the keys that are able to open, and no man shutteth, and no man openeth, and that corresponds to 2 prophets, well, a prophet and a king, who Yah raises up. So during the Assyrian captivity, the Assyrians tried to capture the kingdom of Judah, and there were 2 witnesses there who stood against the king of Assyria. The first was the king Eliakim, who was over the household of Shebna, the scribe. And he and the elders and priests went covered with sackcloth to Isaiah, son of Amos. And they both prayed against the Assyrian king, who spoke against Yah and said that no God could beat him. And of course, Eliakim, his name was changed to Jehoiakim, which means Yahuwah raises up, meaning like, I will set up an ensign to the nations. Okay? And then as Isaiah was the prophet of the time. And so the prophecy was, I will call my servant Eliakim, son of Hilkiah, and I will clothe him with my robe, strengthen him with my girdle, and I will commit my government to his hand, and he shall be the father of the inhabitants of Jerusalem and those of the house of Judah. And the key of the house of David will I lay on his shoulder, and he shall open, and none shall shut, and he shall shut, and none shall open. And I will hang upon him all the glory of his father's house, the offspring, the issue, all vessels of small quantity, from vessels of cups even unto all vessels and flagons. In other words, the people are vessels of silver and gold for service. And so these 2, Eliakim or Jehoiakim and Isaiah, were witnesses to this prophecy of the government being on the shoulders of Yahusha when he would come. But they were the Yahweh raises up. They laid the foundation for Yahusha
coming and performing that role. And this is why when Yahusha comes, it says that he will open and no man will shut, and he will shut and no man will open when he enters through the east gate. Now, these two sticks, or the northern and southern kingdom of brotherly love, also correspond to Ezekiel 37 and the raising of the dry bones. And Ezekiel takes two different sticks and writes on them the tree of Joseph, which is Ephraim and his fellow tribes with him, and the tree of Judah and his fellow tribes with him, and he makes one tree of them in his hand, in his right hand. And so those are the two brothers, the northern and southern kingdom with their companions, who then enter without enduring the great tribulation into the wilderness, and whom Yah purges in the wilderness. So there are two more witnesses. Now, during 2 Kings, there is a period when the prophet Elijah must help a widow whose husband is cut off. In other words, is dead, so she's a widow. So she represents Israel, and Yah has abandoned her, or Yahusha has died. She has two sons who were sold into bondage as bondmen, slaves, which is the northern and southern kingdom. And as that widow is in bondage with her two sons in a foreign land, she has nothing to eat, she has no wealth. And so Elijah makes it possible for her to create wealth by selling oil and selling vessels of oil to her neighbors, to strangers. And so she does that and then reserves the last of the oil for herself and her two sons after they pay their debt. So this is obviously a picture of the two sons being the two witnesses to the nation paying their debt to Yah, making atonement and having enough oil to enter into the kingdom of heaven. So here is Israel and the northern and southern kingdom as witnesses of paying their debt as a nation, which is the widow woman, to Yahuwah, and the prophet is a witness to it, Prophet Elijah. Now, during the Great Tribulation, after the 144,000 have been marked, there are two olive trees which stand between the whole earth, before the whole earth, and they are a parallel to Elijah and Moses. Moses called down all of the plagues, and Elijah called fire down from heaven. So they both called judgment upon Egypt. And so the 144,000 are the two witnesses who stand ministering before Yahuwah, but also who judge the earth, and no one can kill them. And there are also two candlesticks who stand before Yahuwah of the earth, in the earth. And these are the remaining 6 churches who go through the tribulation. And they, like the two witnesses, the 144,000, witness in the earth to Yahuwah and worship him and even die for him. And ultimately, when the two witnesses, the 144,000, ascend up to heaven and sing a song nobody knows, then suddenly after them appears thousands upon thousands, a great multitude in heaven that cannot be numbered, who come out of the tribulation, but they are up in the upper heaven. And those are those of the 6 churches which come through the tribulation, and they end up in the heights of heaven, not necessarily the 1,000-year reign. There are 2 churches that do, but once again, these 6 churches and the 144,000 are the 2 witnesses before Yahuwah in the earth during the tribulation. One of the churches that seems to be able to make it into the 1,000-year reign is the Church of Thyatira, and that church will be given power over the nations and will rule them with a rod of iron. As vessels as a potter shall they be broken to shivers. And they will be given the morning star, which was Hasatan's star. And so it seems they're able to go in and out of the kingdom, but they may not be saved from the second death. So they may have to go through some sort of a trial. We don't know. The other church for certain that will be saved from the second death, but must go through
a tribulation and be faithful unto death for 10 days, they will receive a crown of life in the 1,000-year reign and escape the second death, as I say. And they seem to be the genetically grafted in. Smyrna, which is Assyria. So that would be like the Samaritans, who are a mixture of both sets of Midianites, the ones of Japheth and the ones of Keturah, so the ones of the Medo-Persians and the ones of Keturah, and other Assyrian mixed nations. It seems that the Ephesians remember their first love, and I believe that that is actually the seed of Israel, and they end up eating of the tree of life in the midst of the paradise of Yahuwah. So it seems like they enter the kingdom of the 1,000-year reign that's on the earth and can eat of the tree of life. So they're not up in heaven. Some may be in heaven, though, perhaps having died through self-sacrifice. Pergamos, they seem to get a white stone, and I'm not sure if that's in the 1,000-year reign, or again, if they're up in heaven with Yahuwah ruling up there during the 1,000-year reign. Seems like Sardis perhaps ends up in heaven and is confessed before, clothed in white raiment. Their name is not blotted out of the book of life, and their name is confessed before Yahuwah and the angels. So that gives me the feeling that they're up in heaven, although they could be on the earth. And then finally, the last church of Laodicea. Seems that the Laodiceans are neither hot or cold, and they're lukewarm, and they're rich, and they need to be tried with fire. And he's going to chasten them, but he says, I stand at the door and knock, sup with me. If you let me in, I'll sup with you, you will sup with me, and they will be granted to sit in Yahuwah's throne. All right? And with my Father in his throne. So that's up in the heavens. All right? So it seems like they don't necessarily enter the 1,000-year reign. The other ones, it's sort of questionable, but definitely Thyatira and Smyrna do enter the 1,000-year reign. Seems like Pergamos and Ephesus may also be there because of the tree of life, and I think it's the white stone may allow them to be in the kingdom. Otherwise, they're in the kingdom of heaven up above. Everybody else has come through the great tribulation through death. And so, or they've come in as companions of Israel when they go into the 1,000-year reign, and they come out in the second Exodus. So it's my understanding the churches seem to go through the tribulation, but not the great tribulation. And the ones who died, especially of Smyrna, end up reigning in the kingdom itself for 1,000 years as well. But it's still not entirely clear to me the difference between the great tribulation and the tribulation, and who makes it into the kingdom, or who ascends up to heaven. So since we've done the broad strokes, let's do some finer ones to try and investigate this. I don't have a final answer, but I think I'm getting close. So I'd love your comments.
So we're going to use the book of Daniel to contextualize this sort of last section of the study, because it gives us a sense of the timing of things. And we'll go into more detail. So let's just read through this so that you guys can understand some context. And this is the prophecy of the end to Daniel, the prophet, who was in Babylon. And at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince which standeth for the children of thy people. And there shall be a time of trouble, such as never was since there was a nation, even to that same time. And at that time thy people shall be delivered, every one that shall be found written in a book. And many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt. And they that be wise shall shine as the brightness of the firmament, and they that turn many to righteousness as the stars forever and ever. But thou, O Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book, even to the time of the end, when many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased. Then I, Daniel, looked, and behold, there stood the other two, the one on this side of the riverbank, and the other on that side of the bank of the river. And one said to the man clothed in linen, which was upon the waters of the river, How long shall it be to the end of these wonders? And I heard the man clothed in linen, which was upon the waters of the river, and he held up his right hand and his left hand unto heaven, and swear by him that liveth forever, that it shall be for a time, times, and a half. And when he shall have accomplished to scatter the power of the holy people, all these things shall be finished. So there's a time of Jacob's trouble, and then the people are scattered, and then everything will be finished. And I heard, but I understood not. Then I said, O Yahuwah, what shall be the end of these things? And he said, Go thy way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed until the time of the end. Many shall be purified and made white and tried, but the wicked shall do wickedly. And none of the wicked shall understand, but the wise shall understand. And from the time that the daily sacrifice shall be taken away, and the abomination that maketh desolate set up, there shall be 1,290 days. Blessed is he that waiteth, and come to the 1,335 days. So that's the 1,335 days that I spoke about. But go thy way till the end be, for thou shalt rest and stand in thy lot at the end of days. So we're going to be talking about this, this 2.5 year periods, and this 1,330 days, and various other aspects of this prophecy. So let's get into it.
But before the 1,000-year reign occurs during a period of 1,260 days, or 3.5 years, or 42 months, a number of events happen simultaneously. And according to the prophecy of Daniel, something amazing happens at the 1,335th day. And so what is this? Well,
let's review the timeline of the two witnesses, the two olive trees and the two candlesticks, and the Church of Philadelphia as they are hidden in the wilderness, because this all becomes very significant to the 1,000-year reign and the eternal reign. And so what we have happen in Revelation chapter 11 is that the 144,000 are sealed. In Revelation chapter 12, the Church of Philadelphia, who is the two sticks, the northern and southern kingdom, and their companions, they flee away into the wilderness, away from the presence of the serpent. And what happens is the dragon makes war with the seed that has the commands and the testimony of Yahusha HaMashiach. So who is this? Well, right over here, it's the two candlesticks. The two candlesticks, okay? And what is said in Revelation as well by John is that he measures the temple, and the Gentiles trampled the outer court for 1,260 days. So you can see that the 3.5 years, 1,260 days, or 42 months, they're all the same. They all equal 3.5 years, basically. All of these things are happening. So the 144,000 with the two witnesses, the two candlestick witnesses, are basically calling down fire and plagues and everything in the tribulation, not yet the great tribulation, but in the tribulation. And the two lampstands, the 6 churches, are witnessing to the truth of the word of Yahuwah and the nations. All right? The woman is hidden in the wilderness. She's actually kind of hidden in the inner court. Because what? The Gentiles are trampling the outer court, and the 6 churches are witnessing. So this is all happening in the 3.5 years. So after that, what happens in Revelations 11 and 7 is that the beast comes up from the sea and kills the 2 witnesses, and their corpses lie dead for 3.5 days. And so I think some of the 2 lampstands are also killed, some of the 6 churches. Why do I say this? There is another 45 days that occur after these 3.5 years, the 1,260 days. And so what we see here is that there are 10 days of trial for Smyrna, and there are 3.5 days in this 45-day period where the 2 olive trees lie dead. And like I said, Smyrna has a trial unto death for 10 days. All right? Because right after this, it says that after 3.5 days, the spirit of life coming from Yahuwah enters into the 2 witnesses, and they stand up and they come up hither. They go up and ascend up into heaven in a cloud, and their enemies see them.
And it is my belief that after their 10 days of being faithful unto death, so too are the various members of the 6 churches resurrected, and they appear up in heaven as this great multitude after 144,000.
Revelation 7 and 9 says, I beheld, and lo, a great multitude which no man could number, all of the nations and kindreds and people and tongues stood before the throne and before the Lamb, clothed with white robes. So I think these are the 2 lampstands. These are the churches, the 6 churches that basically are sacrificed and die and rise up to rule in heaven. And they appear at the same time that the 144,000 appear up there and are transformed into angels. And to me, this is the end of the tribulation. Once again, Daniel 12:12 says, blessed is he who makes it to the 1,335th day. And so right here on this particular day, this is the last 35 days, which I believe may be the Great Tribulation. Now, I don't know this for sure, family. I'm just going off of what I'm reading in Scripture here, but it's entirely possible.
And so for the last 35 days, it is the Great Tribulation.
All these bowls of wrath are emptied out. And so this is for the nations who don't even believe in Yahuwah. And what happens at this time is that it says, and then suddenly I saw another set of angels flying through the heavens, preaching the everlasting good news to the nations. So what happens is that these 144,000 are now angels. So whereas before they were judging over here, now they are angels, and they're preaching the everlasting good news to the nations. I believe the churches are hidden at this point and taken up, and that it is the unbelieving nations that get this good news. And it's also assigned to those of the churches who are hidden in Yah. Okay? Suddenly they say, fear Yahuwah, give glory to him. The hour of his judgment has come. And then it says, and I saw something like a sea of glass mingled with fire, and those who have the victory over the beast. And so I believe this is the Great Tribulation, and this is when the unbelieving nations get brought in, because the good news is preached to them by angels. And that's the 144,000. And that's when every knee will bow and tongue confess Yahusha HaMashiach is Elohim.
So again, the 144,000 are sealed, and they preach 3.5 years. And the woman flees to the wilderness, the Church of Philadelphia, and she flees away from the face of the enemy for 3.5 years. And during that time, the dragon, who is wroth with the woman, goes to make war with the remnant of her seed, the saints who keep the commandments of Yahuwah and have the testimony of Yahusha. So these are the two lampstands. And this is the time, again, where for 3.5 years, the outer court is trampled by the Gentiles. And the two lampstands are witnessing alongside the two olive trees of the 144,000. At the end of this 3.5 year period, the two witnesses are destroyed and they lie dead for 3.5 days. And afterwards, they are called up to heaven. And there we see before the throne of the Lamb the great multitude which no man can number, all of the nations and kindreds and people and tongues who they saved during their witnessing. And they're all before the Lamb of Yahuwah, clothed in white robes with palms in their hands. And this is after the 144 have ascended up to heaven. Daniel 12 and 12, so 12,000 times 12, says, "Blessed is he who makes it to the 1,335th day." And I believe that it is during this time, between the time that they alight up to heaven and are transformed, the 144,000, and this 1,335th day, I believe that they go through the Great Tribulation, preaching the everlasting gospel to everybody who is in the earth and going through the Great Tribulation. Like I said, I think the churches escape it or are hidden because they're marked, possibly. Meanwhile, the nations are going through the Great Tribulation, and the 144,000 are preaching the good news, because as I said, it says another angel, but the translation is allos, meaning many angels preach the everlasting good news, the everlasting covenant. So then in Revelation 15:2, there is a sea of glass mingled with fire with all of those who have had victory over the beast and come out of the great tribulation. And they sing praises to the Lamb. So now this brings us to the great prophets who prophesied the building of the final temple. Now there are more than these, of course, but these are the particular ones who actually witness to the appearing of Yahusha and to the building of the temple. Isaiah seems to have a valley vision. He has a vision in the valley. I'm guessing this is maybe the valley of dry bones, the same one that Ezekiel sees later. And Jeremiah seems to prophesy according to the word. And so in this particular vision we will deal with the prophecies of the two prophets, Isaiah and Jeremiah, who prophesy about the temple. And then we'll go into the other 4 prophets of these 6 prophets who seem to have a different kind of a prophecy or manifestation of it, experiencing it. So according to Isaiah 30 and 25, there shall be upon every high mountain and upon every high hill rivers and streams of waters in the day of the great slaughter, when the towers fall. Moreover, the light of the moon shall be as the light of the sun, and the light of the sun shall be sevenfold, as the light of 7 days, in the day that Yahuwah bindeth up the breach of his people and healeth the stroke of their wound. And we already went over these prophecies about Eliakim, son of Hilkiah. The sun and moon shall be confounded and ashamed when the Lord Yahuwah of hosts shall reign in Mount Zion before the ancients gloriously. Okay, so this is Yahusha who is ruling before all of the ancients in the earthly kingdom. Like I said, the heaven is still above, because remember, at the end of Revelation, heaven comes down from above and finally marries earth at the end of the 1,000-year reign. And Jeremiah actually witnesses according to the word, rather than being present in a live vision and ascending up. But he does witness to the actual event by the word of Yah. Behold, the days come, saith Yahuwah, that the city shall be built to Yahuwah from the tower of Hananiel to the gate of the corner, and the measuring line shall yet go forth over and against it upon the hill of Gareb, and shall compass about to Goath, and the whole valley of the dead bodies, okay, the dry bones that we already talked about, and of the ashes, and all the fields unto the brook of Kidron, and unto the corner of the horse gate towards the east, shall be holy unto Yahuwah, and it shall not be plucked up nor thrown down any more forever. And so in this witness, there is a discussion of a measuring line that will go forth, which we're going to see that these other prophets actually see. But this is a prophecy to Jeremiah according to the word. And the temple is described as well to Jeremiah, and this is according to the word. He witnesses according to the word, but we don't see him at the actual location of the site. However, he is near the east side, near the horse gate. And so let's get into these other prophets who are the actual present witnesses we're going to see to the final building of the temple. One of the greatest prophets to come along in all time was the prophet Daniel, who had been taken in by the eunuch of the Babylonians. The young men who were fine of form and showed intelligence were taken into the Babylonian school of mysteries, and Daniel became a great prophet. And so it is his prophecy upon which so many other greater prophecies are built. And so among many of the prophecies given to Daniel is the final end time prophecy in Daniel 12:1, where it says that at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince which standeth for the children of thy people. And there shall be a time of trouble such as never there was, since there was a nation, even to that time. And at that time thy people shall be delivered, every one that shall be found written in the book. And so we skip down to verse 5. And one of the things that Daniel sees during this vision is he sees Yahusha, and he sees two other witnesses to this final event, the final ending. Then I, Daniel, looked, and behold, there stood other two witnesses, my parentheses, the one on this side of the bank of the river, and the other on that side of the bank of the river. And so verse 6 says, and one said to the man clothed in linen, which was upon the waters of the river, how long shall it be to the end of these wonders? And I heard, ye man clothed in linen, which was upon the waters of the river, when he held up his right hand and his left hand unto heaven, and swear by him that lives forever, that it shall tarry for a time, 2 times and a half. And so this is a picture of the man clothed in linen, who we can see from Ezekiel and other accounts is actually Yahusha. And his hands are raised from heaven, unifying heaven and earth. But he's also swearing to Yahuwah, who is the right, and he is the right hand of Yahuwah, that he shall complete, as we read earlier, he shall finish the work. All right. Now, remember, there are 2 other witnesses there who ask how long this should take, but they're witnessing to his presence, and they're witnessing to the temple that shall be built. So I've positioned 2 prophets here on either side of the river, facing our central prophet Daniel. And the first of them here on the right side is Ezekiel, and I just had him wearing the white. And according to Ezekiel chapter 40 and 47, and even Isaiah 12, there is a prophecy of the temple being built. And what Ezekiel 40 says is, in the 25th year of our captivity, in the beginning of the year, in the 10th day of the month, in the 14th year, after the city was smitten, in the selfsame day, the hand of Yahuwah was upon me and brought me thither. In the vision of Yahuwah brought he me into the land of Israel. So this is actually, now he's placed physically in the land of Israel in his vision, and set me upon a very high mountain, by which was as the frame of a city on the south. And he brought me thither, and behold, there was a man whose appearance was like unto the appearance of brass, with a line of flax in his hand, and a measuring reed, and he stood in the gate. So now remember, this man has the appearance of brass, and we are going to see that we've read already in other scriptures that Yahusha also has the appearance of brass. But this, we're going to find out who this is. And so then in Ezekiel 47 it says, and he brought me to the door of the house, and when the man that had the line in his hand, okay, so that's the same man we just talked about, the line of flax, when the man that had the line in his hand went forth eastward, he measured 1,000 cubits, and he brought me through the waters. The waters were to the ankles, and afterward measured 1,000, and it was a river that I could not pass over. For the waters were risen, waters to swim in, a river that could not be passed over. And he said unto me, Son of man, hast thou seen this? And he brought me, and caused me to return to the brink of the river. And now, when I had returned, behold, at the bank of the river were many trees, on this side and the other, and by the river upon the bank thereof, on this side and the other, shall grow all trees for meat, whose leaf shall not fade, neither shall the fruit thereof. Okay, so he is standing on the riverbank, and it went up to the ankles and also went to a place where it couldn't pass over. And he's literally standing at the brink of the river, witnessing this river that's come out from the temple, and how it's creating all of these trees everywhere that the nations will feed off of. And he's also seen the temple. And just another witness here from Isaiah 12, therefore with joy shall you draw water out of the wells of salvation. So this is a living, fresh water that is coming out of the temple. And so that is why I show this picture of Ezekiel standing by the side of the river, witnessing the man with the measuring line in the temple, and witnessing to the vast rivers and their depths and their lengths that they go out to create this living water and all these trees that will give life to the nations. Now, pictured here across the river from Ezekiel is the prophet Zechariah, who comes probably 100 years later. And Zechariah has a vision himself, where he says, I lifted up mine eyes again and looked, and behold, a man with a measuring line in his hand. So we see the man with the measuring line again. Then said I, Whither goest thou? And he said unto me, To measure Jerusalem, to see what is the breadth thereof, and what is the length thereof. And behold, the angel that talked with me went forth, and another angel went out to meet him, and said unto him, Run, speak to this young man, saying, Jerusalem shall be habited as towns without walls, for the multitude of men and cattle therein. For I, saith Yahuwah, will be unto her a wall of fire round about, and will be a glory in the midst of her. So it seems almost as though Zechariah was just talking to the man with the measuring line who is up in the temple. And he is witnessing the man with the measuring line, as well as Ezekiel is witnessing the man with the measuring line. And also, Daniel is witnessing to the two men, Ezekiel and Zechariah, standing on either side of the river, and Yahusha prophesying the building of the temple and the end of Jacob's trouble. So what is it that places Zechariah by the river? Well, the reason why I've placed him by the river is because of Zechariah 14:4 says regarding the Mount of Olives, and his feet, this is Yahusha HaMashiach, shall stand in that day upon the Mount of Olives, which is before Jerusalem on the east, and on the Mount of Olives shall cleave in the midst thereof towards the east and towards the west, and there shall be a very great valley, and half of the mountain shall remove towards the north, and half shall remove towards the south. So he actually witnesses this. And so this is the splitting of the Mount of Olives and the water gushing forth. Now, I've already mentioned to you that out of the Garden of Eden flows the four great rivers. And the Garden of Eden is east, in the east end of the land of Israel. And when we look at this map, we see that there is this large mountain, and we can see there are two rivers on top of it in the top right-hand corner here. And it is like a plateau and like a crouching lion, and out of it come these great streams and rivers and waters. And I believe this is the Mount of Olives in the midst of the Congo. So we can see from this map that I've shown you guys before that the plateaus and mountains in Kenya and Kilimanjaro and Ethiopia are equal to the height of those mountains, and upper mountainous plains are equal to this plain that is in the midst of the Congo. And so I believe that's where the Mount of Olives is. And so these are the waters of life coming out of the temple. And he witnesses to the temple being measured. So who is the man with the measuring line? Well, it's none other than John the Revelator. Revelations 11:1 says, "And there was given me a reed like unto a rod, and the angel stood, saying, Rise and measure the temple of Yahuwah, and the altar, and them that worship therein. But the court which is without the temple leave out and measure it not, for it is given unto the Gentiles, and the holy city shall they tread under feet 42 months, which is the same amount of time, a time times and half a time, which was the same amount of time that was just mentioned earlier by Daniel. And so we see here he is with his measuring rod. So it seems that John is measuring the temple as it's being built in the heavenly realm at the command of an angel who could be the angel of Yahuwah. And the waters have broken forth because we know that Zechariah had a vision of the mountain of olives splitting, the Mount of Olives. Okay, the two witnesses are the two olive trees that stand before Yahuwah. Now the temple will be trampled outside, and this is when the two witnesses, the 144,000, witness in the earth along with the two candlesticks. Now, if we look at this configuration of the four of these prophets, we see in the midst of them Yahusha, and even on top of the mountain is Yahusha. And so we see on either side of Yahusha, Ezekiel and Zechariah. We see in the midst of Daniel and John the Revelator, there is Yahusha again. And so Yahusha is being witnessed to on either side of him by Zechariah and Ezekiel, by John and Daniel, and he's being witnessed to both standing in the water and standing on top of the Mount of Olives and splitting it apart. And so there are two witnesses for all of those events in this kind of time travel time machine. Now, these prophets were somewhat contemporaries of one another, but you can also see by the timeline on the left that there's a lot of distance between them as well. Yet they're all seeing the same vision and they're witnessing to one another. Now, what is really interesting about this is that their 12 tribes are configured in 4 to the north, south, east, and west, and each tribe is given the same symbol as the cherubim. The lion, the head of the lion is Judah, Dan is the eagle, and to the west is Ephraim and Joseph, the bull's head, and to the south is the head of the man with the tribe of Reuben. And the 4 angels, the cherubim who fly around the throne of Yahuwah, saying, Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh is Yahuwah, they have those same 4 heads, and they're the same 4 corners of Yahuwah. And so this is very similar to the configuration of these 4 men witnessing to Yahusha HaMashiach. And so you can see how they're basically laying the foundation of the temple. The 12 tribes did this, and now these 4 prophets essentially are witnessing to Yahusha, drawing together the kingdom above in heaven and the kingdom below, that was Israel, into the final kingdom by lifting up his hands towards heaven and splitting the earth to bring forth the waters of life for the 1,000-year reign. I don't want you to forget that Yahusha himself is described as having skin like brass, burnished brass. And by the way, so is John the Revelator. And so we now know that the Israelites have skin like burnished brass, like their brother Yahusha HaMashiach. And so when we draw this parallel in real life to images like this, we see that we can definitely parallel the skin of burnished brass and the hair white like lamb's wool to the true children of Israel, who are the 2 true witnesses. So we have these prophets witnessing to Yahusha and his return to the 1,000-year reign in the kingdom of heaven, and him establishing that kingdom. And so we also have another picture where there are 5 prophets witnessing to Yahusha, and that is when Yahusha comes. And Yahusha is also on the Mount of Olives when he gives a prophecy of end times. And we're not sure which mountain he's on when this vision takes place, where we have Peter and James and John 6 days after 6 days, they're upon the mountain. So for the 7th day, the 1,000-year reign. And they're on this high mountain by themselves, and Yahusha is transfigured before them. His face shines like the sun, just like when Moses went up to the mountain to meet Yah. And then appears Moses and Elijah. Now, these are the two witnesses who have the power to bring plagues, like I said before, that the 144,000 will do, and to call fire down from heaven. And so we have, again, 5 prophets witnessing to the one Yahusha. All right? And we know that John, the baptizer, the spirit of Elijah went into him. Okay? Because it is appointed unto a man once to die, and Elijah never died. And so his spirit was given into John, and John had to die a prophet's death, because it's appointed unto a man once to die. But here we have the 5 witnesses again. And so Ephesians says that you are no longer strangers and aliens. This is regarding the Gentiles and Israel when Israel was cut off, but Israel first and then the Gentiles. But you are fellow citizens with the saints and members of the household of Yah, built on the foundation of who? The apostles and the prophets, and Yahusha himself being the cornerstone, in whom the whole structure being joined together grows into a holy temple in Yahusha, in whom you are also being built together into a dwelling place for Yah by the Ruach HaKodesh. Okay, living stones being built up as a spiritual house. And so those are really, it's 2 witnesses on all sides of Yahusha's return. And so it kind of is a time machine. So these prophets witness to the rest of Israel, the 3rd temple and the 4 rivers and tree of life that will spring up again to give life during the 1,000-year reign. And these 6 prophets also witness to one another, but most importantly, all 6 witness to the coming of Yahusha HaMashiach, 1,000-year reign that ends in the eternal reign. Notice there are 6 churches going through the Great Tribulation who are the 2 lampstands witnessing to the olive trees and Yahusha. So in these 4 of the 4 corners witnessing to the return of HaMashiach, they are also witnessing to all of the work of the seed of Israel and the work that Messiah has done, returning as an angel, then a man, then going down to death, resurrecting, returning to heaven, and coming down as the king, the presence of Yahuwah, and sitting on the throne, and finally heaven coming down, and Yahuwah and Yahusha really becoming one. And so all of this is displayed along this continuum of time, and we're able to see how he worked out our salvation through time, and so did the ancestors of the seed of Israel. The total time frame for these prophecies, which take place from Isaiah to the Apostle Paul, is about 700 years, 1 week of time. And that tells you really who the 2 witnesses are. And I hope that also answers the question as to who the 2 candlesticks are. Those are the Gentile churches who will go through the tribulation, and the 144,000 are there calling down judgment, and they are protected by Yah, and they end up in the heights of heaven outside of the 1,000-year reign. They are up in heaven during the 1,000-year reign. There's a portion of the churches that will be in the 1,000-year reign, but that is what the picture looks like. So the 2 witnesses, again, I say are 144,000, but the most interesting thing about all of this is how the prophets witnessed through time together as one. Even though they were in different places and different times, Yah ensured that they all saw the same vision. And they are a picture of the light, they are a picture of the oil, they are a picture of the olive tree, they are a picture of the almond tree. They are pictures of the sons of Yah, angels, cherubim. They are all of those things witnessing to the 1,000-year reign, when they will be kings and priests and like angels ruling in the 1,000-year reign. And so that concludes this study. And once again, you're going to have to pause to read a lot of these scriptures and probably watch this video several times. I think I'm the only one who's done this kind of a video on this topic. So as usual, it's a new word, and it's not a parable. It is the mystery And so it's only given to a few to understand, and so I hope it's given to you in the name of Yahusha HaMashiach. May God bless you and keep you and cause his face to shine on you. May he be gracious, lift the light of his countenance, and give you shalom. So the next study will be on the actual kingdom of heaven and how that kind of filters out.
Okay, family, so just come to intoalltruth.net to learn more about Hebrew Israelite teachings, and go ahead and go to the shop page, and you can get the Moed Appointed Times, which I eat, life, and fast, or you can get a t-shirt or a hoodie. And if you just click through, you'll click through to my Teespring page, and you can also find, cheaper items like, cups and tumblers and thermoses, that kind of thing. All right, so please support the ministry, and yeah, and you can just support here as well, okay, through a recurring membership. All right, so thank you so much for watching, and go ahead and pick up that calendar or the lifestyle book. Baruch.
Yahusha, Israel, who love, worship, and praise Yahweh. Give him thanks by saying hallelujah.